There's a question from Corinne Williams, okay, so this is for the panelists. I'm going to read out the question aloud to you, and whoever amongst you feel like is most comfortable with asking that question, just please raise your hand, and I will direct the question to you. That doesn't mean that other panelists also do not have to answer that question, so we can have this back and forth flow of conversation going on between all 6 of us. To the host, can we take up the slide so we can, see all the people in a grid form? Thank you. So the first question that I have is, what benefit would pediatric-specific breakthrough designation have over the currently existing program? Pediatric devices could still go through the current breakthrough, correct? So it's a fair question. Like, I think it would be good to clarify what exactly do we mean by expanding the breakthrough program in Shipmd. Yes.
Maybe
yes,
I can start and others can add. So the current breakthrough designation program is absolutely, the person who asked this question is absolutely correct, that pediatric devices can still go through the current program. The program is not specific to pediatric devices and doesn't exclude them either. But it is in our guidance document, it does outline that the program is intended for devices that are going to go through the PMA, the 510K, or the de novo pathway. And we know that there are, a number of pediatric devices that pursue the HDE pathway, and the current program doesn't necessarily specify HDE. And so I think that there's the potential for a gap in the program for HDE devices. So I think that's where we're referring to, and that Francesca sort of highlighted during the presentation.
Yes, please go ahead, Minerva.
Yeah, and just to add to that, one of the things that was highlighted is that, we were interested in trying to optimize the program. We've heard and learned that oftentimes there's a lot of regulatory programs and tools at the agency that would be beneficial but aren't utilized to their best. And one opportunity is for Ship to provide that platform for those regulatory resources to really improve optimal utilization of existing beneficial programs, such as the Breakthrough Devices program.
Thanks, Minerva. Anyone else in the panel has any thoughts about this? Okay, then there is another question now that we're talking about the, yes.
Sorry.
Yes, Tara, go ahead.
I had a little difficulty getting off mute. I do think both Nicole and Francesca have outlined some of the limitations of the current breakthrough program, but the structure of the program in the way it's been implemented is limiting the number of pediatric devices that qualify. So I think part of what was contemplated in a new pediatric device breakthrough program is to make sure that it's structured in a way that's optimal for all pediatric devices to potentially qualify.
Thank you so much, Tara. Now that we're talking about breakthrough, there was another question that I got offline, and I think it makes perfect sense to ask it here. How does FDA differentiate the breakthrough pathway as it currently exists and as it might exist in the future, the expanded breakthrough pathway from compassionate use, emergency use, and HUD pathways? Any volunteers? Maybe our FDA colleagues have. Nicole, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I think we had this question in a prior session as well. I was going to see if Minerva wanted to answer. I think she did a great job last time.
Yeah, this is from the previous session, but I thought that I have a list of the questions from the other session. So I thought now that you're talking about it, it's going to be a great, education opportunity for the audience, so that we have the entire topic covered really thoroughly. So yes, please, Minerva, go ahead.
So I have a lot of background noise right now, which is why I was still on mute.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can hear you. We don't have any background noise on our side, so please go ahead, and we can hear you perfectly well.
I can also start if that's helpful, and then Minerva, you can fill in. So maybe I'll start by sort of just defining kind of the different programs. The Breakthrough Designation Program is intended really for innovative technologies, and the designation is granted for a particular indication, actually. And so the intent is that it would be an innovative technology for a particular population, for a particular institute. I think that's a little bit different from what we term the Expanded Access Program, which includes compassionate use and emergency use of medical devices. And those are really about treating a specific patient in a specific situation where that patient has no other alternative. And so where the breakthrough designation is really a sort of a population-based designation and treatment option, the expanded access program, like emergency and compassionate use, is really about a patient-specific treatment. And then I would say the HUD designation is kind of in a different bucket, in that it's really centered around a designation for rare diseases or rare populations, in that it's intended for devices that treat 8,000 patients or less per year. So the three programs are pretty distinct.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you so much. That's I think it clarifies it really well. Minerva, I don't know if you want to talk about it now, but if you have any further thoughts, I'm happy to hear them.
Thank you. And this is sort of the audience, we're live, and it's sort of trash day in my neighborhood, so I apologize for that as it rolls behind. But yes, thank you, Nicole, for that really great summary. Just, to add on top of what Nicole was trying to highlight with the different populations, is also to sort of, remind ourselves about the intent of the program. Compassionate use, we're really talking about getting a different way of getting access to investigational drugs for treatment in specific cases. And then that comes up sometimes with clinical investigations. And I know we had a question earlier on is, how we might think about those types of deviations or requests in a Shipmd framework. And, we would, factor that into how we would think about executing a protocol more broadly. But the intent there is very different. But when you're talking about an HDE exemption or HUD device or breakthrough devices, you're looking, as Nicole was saying, at the development program and different ways of how you're engaging with the FDA to pursue that particular program aimed at specific indications and so forth. So just wanted to add that nuance about the context as well.
Thank you so much, Minerva. I think, yes, this is very helpful. Thanks again. Anyone else in the panel has any thoughts? Okay, I have a question from Sarah Rogers, and that talks about, can you speak to how Shipmd intends to facilitate the process of connecting innovators with device champions within the hospital? For example, will Shipmd build or maintain a database with the information about individuals and their areas of expertise? Anyone want to take a stab at that?
I don't know if we got as far into those details yet, whether it would be publicly available information or just within the framework of SHIP. People, it's specific to the disease, and product. So whether if Shipmd gets to a consortium phase, whether the folks within the consortium would be able to consider each, device that's applying to be in Shipmd, consider what expertise is relevant. But whether it would be a publicly available database, I don't think we discussed.
Okay. And another, I guess, question that is, I guess, quite a bit similar to this one is that will the Shipmd resources portal be freely available to the public again, or is it going to be available to the innovators admitted into the Shipmd program?
I think it's one of the benefits of being in the Shipmd program, so it's available to the members.
Okay. But again, it's like something.
It's all publicly available information. It's just harder to find. We envision this resource portal as just putting everything relevant into one place, rather than having to weed through. Even the FDA.gov website can be confusing, and you can put in search terms that you think will bring up a hit, but it doesn't, even though it may. Just kind of avoiding those kind of logistical issues and housing things all in one place. And then also kind of stimulating thought. So perhaps an innovator doesn't know that a guidance document exists, or, that's relevant to pediatrics. So it's just kind of all there in one place.
Thanks, Francesca. I see Minerva had raised her hand. Minerva, do you have any thoughts about it?
Yes, I was just chuckling when Francesca was talking about, accessing data, and to unfortunately admit, because someone from the FDA who has to use Google sometimes to search for resources, even within the FDA, to sort of emphasize the value of actually having those resources concentrated and focused on sort of pediatric development.
Absolutely. Yeah, I get the point. Okay. Then there was a question from Behruz. How many times can someone use or request compassionate use? If I understand the question, basically, I think this person is asking, is there like numeric limitations for like, requesting a compassionate use program? Or yes, Minerva.
So we have, here I am then referring you back to our website where it's hard to find his response. But we actually recently updated our website on the FDA Expanded Access Program to sort of tackle just these types of questions that we were getting and trying to make the information a little bit more clear. We don't tie necessarily numbers around compassionate use programs, but, I will say that, expanded access as a whole is often sort of the exception, not the norm. Generally, folks, these are investigational products often under clinical studies, and ideally, folks would be enrolling in clinical trials to receive access to those products. But we do recognize that there are some cases where that's not always possible, and these investigational products do provide a beneficial treatment option. So there aren't specific numbers, but I would say that hopefully our updated page that we just did a year ago is one of the better resources at FDA for this particular person with a question to explore more on that topic.
Thanks. Thank you, Minerva. Thanks again. So this is, I think, a process question in terms of how Shipmd is going to operate. What are the criteria for membership in Shipmd? Have we determined those criteria yet? Are we in the process of getting to those criteria? Anyone in the panel has any thoughts about it?
Well, this is Tara. I'll take a stab. I would recommend that the questioner spend time reviewing the navigation panels through the video access, but we're in the conceptual phase, and some of these types of questions would be determined in more detail in the consortium phase. So what is the process for application? What are the criteria for getting into Shipmd? Those are details that we're thinking about, but we haven't settled on. And we're certainly interested in any input folks may have on those types of questions.
Thank you so much, Tara. Okay. Another question from Michael Billig that earlier this week, FDA had an announcement of a new resource for veterinarians and pet owners interested in clinical studies. Could a program be done for pediatric clinical studies if the sponsor volunteered for inclusion? I believe they're talking about veterinarians. So I'm a bit unclear about this question, but could Shipmd support this? Michael, do you want to elaborate a little bit more on what exactly did you mean in that question? So why don't you put in a new question and I can relate to the panelists. In any case, if you have an idea on our FDA colleagues have any idea about that, and want to take a stab at it, happy to get your thoughts.
Well, again, I'll take a stab. I mean, I think this particular program is focused on children and pediatrics. So, you know, without better understanding the question, we're really not focused at all on veterinary devices or those types of issues in this program or this workshop.
Correct. Thank you, Tara. But again, just to respond to Michael, if you would want to clarify your question, and we should be able to take a better stab at it. I do have a few more questions that were sent to me. One of the questions was, per the FDA guidance, FDA differentiates the pediatric population into neonates, children, infants, and adolescents. However, some clearance letters for orthopedics read for pediatric use in mature bone. Does anyone in the panelists, especially our FDA colleagues, have thought about this? Yes, Nicole.
Yeah, I can answer. I'm not sure if I will be able to be specific to the example provided, but I think there are some cases, in some indication for use statements, you might, the statement might say that it's indicated for pediatric patients, and then identify a particular subset of patients that either meet some sort of anatomical criteria or developmental criteria or other, other criteria that narrows the focus of the indication. So that's, and I can think of, several devices, not just in the orthopedic space, but even in the cardiovascular space, where that would be the case. And so you could conceivably think about perhaps a patient who is pediatric, but maybe may not meet the anatomical or the developmental criteria of mature bone, for example. And so I think it's really just a way of further identifying the population, what subset of the pediatric population the device is indicated for. And like I said, I think there are examples of this in other device spaces as well, not just in orthopedics.
Thanks, Nicole. Okay, any further feedback or thoughts on this particular question? Okay, if not, there's a question from Corinne Williams. And the question is, do you have any thoughts on the use of early feasibility studies for pediatric devices? Is it very much like on a case-by-case basis? Is it generally encouraged, or is it not? Do you have any thoughts about that?
So I can start, and if any others want to add. I think I highly recommend the early feasibility study program for device development. I think that there's been a lot of successes, and there's been successes in the pediatric space. And in fact, the very first few devices that were, or studies that were approved in the early feasibility program, at least one of them was a pediatric device in the cardiovascular space. So I think it's a really important program, especially for devices that are in early phases of development. And I think it can facilitate not only communication with FDA, early communication with FDA, but can also maintain that communication through the development process. I can tell you that it's very difficult for us at FDA for the first time that we encounter a device, to see it, late in the development process. It would be ideal for us to be sort of learning along the way with the innovator. And I can tell you, I can speak from a cardiovascular standpoint. We have several early feasibility studies underway in on pediatric devices and in pediatric populations. So I think it's an incredibly beneficial program that I would highly recommend for pediatric device development.
Thanks, Nicole. I see Francesca raised her hand. Francesca, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just thought I'd take the chance to try to relate, to bring back, with the last few questions, they were kind of specific regulatory questions. And the purpose of this workshop today is to talk about the value add of this Shipmd concept. And I think that kind of highlights what we're going for here. You know, people have these questions, you know, as you go through the development process, you know, and with a more interactive environment, you know, and utilizing positions like the FDA liaison and the Shipmd champion, really stimulating the conversation, making an easier place to connect folks that, you know, and keep that conversation going. And, you know, so the innovators don't just kind of get lost and head off in the wrong direction before they, you know, come to the FDA and kind of wasted some time. So that the Shipmd could really fill that role of, I don't know if I want to say hand-holding, but, you know, really facilitating communication between the FDA, the innovator, you know, and getting the relevant expertise behind it all to really push it forward and help better ensure success.
Just to chime in on that, Francesca, you know, it occurred to me earlier, there's this phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. And, you know, what Shipmd is really trying to do is create the village and support network around pediatric device development. And I think this piece that you've highlighted about the interactive dialogue between FDA, the innovator, and the champion, the clinical experts, is going to be so important to, you know, create the support network to get these devices through quickly and efficiently so that we can serve patients, our children.
Yeah, thanks, Tara. And just pointing out, there is a mechanism now to talk to the FDA, you know, the pre-submission Q-sub process. But if Shipmd could help make that more efficient and more timely, that's where you know, the value add would be.
Yeah. And I would also like to have industry perspective on this. I see Eric Chen is on the panel. So, Eric, do you have any thoughts in terms of perspective from the industry?
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Kamaljeet. I think, you know, my colleagues on the panel today have echoed the importance of thinking outside the box and thinking of innovative ways of developing and improving and enhancing the medical device ecosystem for pediatrics. We're all aware of all of us in this community how difficult it is to bring pediatric devices to market, whether it's because of the small sample size or because of some type of financial constraints or anything like that. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think as we are pursuing a solution for addressing the unmet needs as it comes to pediatric patients, you know, that's consistent with the mission of the FDA. It's consistent with the mission of industry. It's consistent with the mission of folks who have been in this field of pediatrics for a very, very long time. And for us to be able to come together today, you know, over these past few days to talk about this is just a testament of the willingness of all of us to walk together on a path in order to, you know, elevate our commitment to the innovation of pediatric medical devices. You know, specifically from an industry standpoint, as a large medical device manufacturer, you know, we see SHIP as something that can be very, very beneficial. Of course, we'll be keeping our eye out as to the progression of how it can be helpful to us as well as others. You know, we can see that if we create some type of clinical trial network for pediatrics, we realize that could potentially reduce costs, right? That helps decrease that aspect from a manufacturer standpoint as well. Perhaps it can help with the assistance of recruiting pediatric patients, right? Pediatric patients are spread across geographically in the United States. And so trying to run some type of clinical trial could be a little difficult at times. We definitely appreciate that there may need to be some type of legislation change when it comes to being able to designate all pediatric devices as breakthrough, right? There's going to need to be some discussions at the stakeholder level to determine, how that could potentially play out. Furthermore, I think the capability of Shipmd to have resources such as clinicians, expert folks who have been using devices in a way to help their pediatric patients is one thing that we can continue to use. Perhaps there are pediatric registries that could be used to facilitate and serve as real-world evidence and present that information to FDA with regards to the benefit-risk profile or benefit-risk threshold as it comes to trying to get approval of these devices for pediatrics. So, I think there's a lot of benefit. Of course, yes, we're still in this early gathering stage, but I think there's a lot of momentum from all the stakeholders that this is not a new concept, but it's a commitment to innovation in pediatric medical devices.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Eric. Okay, yes, go ahead, Francesca.
Just to briefly add on to that in case it's unclear, so it's intended also to be, you can enter and exit at various points depending on your need as an innovator. So there is some flexibility that we envisioned in this. So not everyone will have the same needs, and Shipmd as the network is intended hopefully to kind of cover all bases and to be utilized, as an innovator sees fit.
And for the general audience, if you would like to have more visibility into the criteria to enter SHIP, exit SHIP, I think very, very soon we will be putting out the videos for all other sessions on the Shipmd website. And do make sure to look into the videos by the navigation workstream. That workstream really in detail talks just about the criteria for entry, when entry is going to be possible, criteria for exit, what constitutes a successful exit, what constitutes success within SHIP. All of those topics are covered really thoroughly in there. But I just wanted to let the audience know about that. Another question from Behruz is that how can specialty pediatric registries be helpful to Shipmd? And do you feel is it beneficial? If it is beneficial, is there a possible collaboration between those registries and Shipmd? Eric, Tara, anyone else in the team?
Yeah, I think I kind of briefly touched about that in my introductory comments, but I think registries is very, very helpful when it comes to being able to provide supportive information to the FDA with regards to trying to demonstrate safety and effectiveness of any medical device. Now, when it comes to pediatrics, I think it's also beneficial. There are pediatric registries that are out there. There's certain cardiovascular registries for pediatric patients. And, the FDA has mentioned many, many times in conferences and in publications that they are open to seeing data regardless of where that data comes from. Now, the caveat to that, of course, is the fact that it has to be data that is of good quality. And so I think, being able to use a registry can be very helpful. And, I think, Shipmd with the expertise that's there, that is one of the advantages of it is having pediatric expertise. These experts can know where the registries are, what the data is contained with them, and be able to determine whether or not the data can be useful for some type of collaboration, whether it's a publication to talk about clinical practice for certain medical devices, or perhaps be used as a marketing application. So I think, there's a lot of advantages to that, but of course, the devils are in the details, and those are things that we need to flesh out as we continue to work on this effort.
Thanks, Eric. Okay, anyone else have thoughts about this? If not, this is a question from to our FDA colleagues. Is FDA formally involved with the Shipmd program, or what is FDA's involvement in there? Nicole, do you want to take a stab at that? I think I cannot hear you. Sorry, I cannot hear you.
I think Minerva was raising her hand. I can let her go first if she'd like.
Yes, please, Minerva. Yes, go ahead.
Sure. I was just going to reiterate some of the things that was said earlier, that, this is a early phase idea. We're in the pre-consortium phase, seeking feedback on whether to go, no go with respect to the Shipmd enterprise. But by my presence, as well as Nicole's presence and others on the executive committee, you can see that the agency in and of itself is very interested in supporting the development of pediatric devices. There are several proposals on the table, and I don't want to sort of take away from this that there are specific commitments at this time, but we're trying to get some ideas and welcome any new ideas and how we can help improve the clinical trial enterprise to move the pediatric development forward. So there's nothing sort of set in stone today, but what we can say today that we are supportive of this effort. We are here on this panel. We are part of these discussions and helping to move the initiative forward.
Thanks, Minerva.
This is Sarah. I think Vasim commented on this in an earlier panel. This whole initiative is a volunteer effort, and I think Eric alluded to that a little bit too. So I have to say, from AdvaMed's perspective and industry's perspective, we are so appreciative of the time and effort that our FDA colleagues have put into this pre-conceptual and conceptual phase, because this is a challenging area, and we have, there's a lot of folks, 65 people who've been involved in this for a year and a half, trying to put this together. So again, I just want to say thank you to our FDA colleagues for spending their extra time on top of their day job on this particular initiative, and seeing if we can, go from the conceptual phase to a consortium phase.
Yes, and I echo your thoughts absolutely, Tara. And would also say this is a multi-stakeholder initiative comprising of many partners. FDA is one of them, industry, many industry members, then AdvaMed, then clinicians, and then people who are finance experts, people who are regulatory experts. So, they're all working together as equal partners and trying to make a difference and really trying to, advance and accelerate innovation in pediatric medical devices. So yes, thank you so much. One question was about timeline. What type of timeline are we looking for to expecting between now, the concept phase, to where the consortium is formed and where the resources are actively available? Are we looking at months, years? I think it was discussed briefly in the presentation today, but I think people would like a little bit more detailed, overview on what our internal timelines are. Tara, do you want to take a stab at that, perhaps?
Yeah, I'm looking for, this was covered in the finance slide deck, and I'm trying to find the particular slide that walked through this. My recollection, and I can't identify the slide.
Give or take, yeah.
Yeah, for the
2022 being the first point that kind of motion takes.
Yeah, so I think 12 to 18 months to develop the details around the actual consortium, and then, once you have that in place, and some of this will depend on financing, finding the financing. But by the was it the third quarter of 2022?
Yeah, something like that. So yeah, give or take 18 to 24 months, like a couple of years at the max is what we're looking for. But again, these timelines are a bit flexible. It can go either ways. Optimistic scenario would be, between 12 to 14 and maybe 18 months is when we are going to go to the next phase is going to be officially launched. That doesn't mean that the work is going to stop between now and then. We're going to be actively working on developing the strategic plan, writing the strategic plan, publishing the strategic plan. All of that work is going to continue in the background, even if, from the outside you cannot see anything happening. Rest assured that we will be keeping on working on this. Another question from Gary Dulac is a key consideration for this work stream and the whole village really is to consider the different type of innovators, the needs and whereabouts of startups and established companies is different. Just a thought for discussion. Perhaps like my industry colleague Eric would like to talk a little bit about the fact that maybe there are different needs for established big companies as compared to small ones. And how Shipmd will cater to those different requirements.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question. There are different levels of innovation, right? You can have, as the audience person noted, you could have a startup company, or you could have a company that's relatively large and has finances to be able to spend on research and development. And I think a key point within Shipmd is there are different avenues where the innovator can enter into Ship and obviously exit. So, perhaps if there is a concept that an innovator is in the early prototype stage, and all this still needs to be discussed out within the framework. And so a early innovator could perhaps come into Ship with some type of early prototype and, perhaps use some of the expertise that might be within Shipmd on, the type of, for example, animal testing that might need to be done in order to satisfy initial safety of device when it comes to FDA. Alternatively, there might be opportunities where an innovator has a device that is pretty much ready for clinical use. That innovator could approach FDA at a different time point where they need help with having a discussion with FDA with regards to the clinical trial infrastructure, as well as the clinical trial protocol that's needed to collect the information to gain marketing approval. Lastly, there could be another alternative where the innovator has already done their clinical trial. They're preparing for a marketing application with the FDA, and they're interested in whether or not there's other data from the real world usage of the device, not through the clinical trial, but perhaps through other aspects. And they're interested in getting advice on using that information as supplemental data to support a marketing application. And so Shipmd is not designed to, as we are thinking through it, it's not designed to limit the type of innovator. And so I, for one, wouldn't expect it to be limited to, a large medical device company or a startup. I think, this program is designed to, again, as I mentioned, elevate our commitment to innovation in pediatric medical devices. And it's an opportunity for all of us to learn, what we can do in order to push the envelope and be able to, have these medical devices for American children, right? They deserve the same commitment to innovation as we have for adults.
Just to tag on to what Eric just said, this is intended to be open to all device companies, but it's not intended to duplicate resources that already exist in the larger ecosystem, and that is we have Pediatric Device Consortium programs. We have 5 of those across the country. I know Children's is involved or runs one of those right now. So that does provide resources and expertise to early phase startups. So Shipmd is really to take that once you graduate out of the PDC program, you're ready to come into Shipmd. That's the concept.
Right. I think Minerva had also a thought, right, Minerva?
Yeah, I did. And actually, Tara took the words out of my mouth. I wanted to stress that, the goal of Shipmd as a system of hospitals is really to advance the clinical evidence generation aspect and streamline that for development. And as Tara was mentioning, we're not trying to replicate or duplicating existing services that might exist and might actually already work well. The goal is to bring added value and to really promote pediatric device development. And to the person that made the comment, I think a lot of this might have come up in, I want to say it might have been maybe the navigation panel. One question we were asking, certainly seeking feedback on is, what sort of services should Shipmd provide? Where is really that value added sweet spot to really move innovation forward in the pediatric space? And so I would encourage that commenter to sort of take a look back at that panel and, add in any comments that they might have on types of services to really move things forward. As Tara mentioned, goal is really not to replicate. She sort of took the words out of my mouth, but thank you guys.
No worries. Thanks, Minerva. Thanks, Tara. Thank you so much.
Great minds think alike, right?
Awesome. A question from Corinne Williams. From a volunteer perspective, are there any ways medical device community can help support Shipmd besides feedback on this workshop at this point? So it's basically if someone wants to get involved now.
Well, I will just say that AdvaMed has a pediatric working group, and it's been instrumental in providing talent and expertise to participate in the coordinating committee for Shipmd, and then we continually provide input to the different work streams, and obviously, I take my cues from that work group in some of my perspective at the executive committee. So that's a potential avenue for companies if they're interested, and you're welcome to reach out to me. I'm happy to have a conversation with you about that.
Thank you, Tara. Francesca, did you have any thoughts about this? I thought you raised the hand. No. Okay.
Chief, this is Erica Torgerson. May I just add one additional comment?
Yes, please. Go ahead, Erica.
Hi, this is Erica Torgerson from the FDA, and I was actually on this regulatory work stream. So I just wanted to add an additional comment regarding volunteering. I know that, as Tara aptly mentioned previously, that there are multiple pediatric device consortia programs across the country. It's possible that some of them might actually need additional resources or benefit from additional volunteer efforts. So I certainly welcome you to reach out to them. Those are on the Office of Orphan Products Development. There's a website there, and they actually have links to all the different consortia. So that might be an option. And certainly I think with regard to the panel today and the discussion today, I think having your also helpful just for future discussion. So thank you for volunteering that, and I apologize. I was having trouble figuring out the mute issue as well. But as Tara and Minerva said, I echo Minerva's points that Tara had taken the words out of my mouth as well. certainly saying that we're not trying to repeat things that already exist. We're trying to build upon it. The Shipmd is really thought to be a system, and it's supposed to offer many things that you don't find maybe all in one spot in the ecosystem currently. So the single IRBs, the clinical trial expertise, the device expertise, having the potential for reimbursement. These are all things that are actually new to be putting them together. So I think that those are all in addition to all the regulatory advice that you would be getting through the SHIP champions and then the interaction with the agency. So I think there's a lot of value added here, and the idea is that we're trying to simplify everything, not just even advice in a portal, but just simplify everything, having easy access to it. And I know that we've talked a lot about entering and exiting and that can be done as you see fit, and I certainly agree there's nothing binding there. But certainly device development is an iterative process. There's a lot of value added here that's beyond just regulatory advice. And so I think to, garner the full benefit of the system, there probably is value added in staying in the system till you reach some sort of completion. But obviously, again, that's not something that's bound. It's just in order for the system to give back to you what you're trying to put into it. I think there probably does take some commitment to stay in the system till you reach your ultimate goal. But that's all I wanted to add. So thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you so much, Erica. It's good to have you here. If you, sorry, I missed that you were trying to speak, but please feel free to chime in at any time you want to answer any questions. There is another question from Gary Dulac saying that other dimension range to consider is the brand new novel class 3 to class 2 indication expansion. It would be good to map those type of needs and shape the services Shipmd would offer around this map. It's just really a comment, not exactly a question. Certainly, this is something that we could potentially be considering. One of the purposes of this workshop is to consider feedback just like this into our strategic framework that we're working on right now. So yes, thank you so much, Gary. We would be considering this. Thanks again. I do have a couple of other questions that I got offline, and that question is with the involvement of FDA liaisons, presumably who are not lead reviewers and external champions, how are you going to ensure that the review team is able to perform an objective review? Any feedback, any thoughts from our FDA colleagues here?
Yeah, so I can maybe take a stab at it.
Yes, please go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, I think the purpose of the FDA liaison is really as a means of providing a link really between Shipmd and the FDA review team. So the FDA liaison is not necessarily going to be conducting the review. They will likely not be part of the review team, but they will be helping to support and facilitate the communication between the innovator, Shipmd, and the review team. And so they'll have the ability to, attend meetings, help provide guidance and support, but will remain independent of the review team. So the review team really will still, be a separate entity in the whole process. And this whole concept of a liaison is not new to FDA programs. So we have multiple programs within CDRH specifically where we have these types of liaisons that sort of help to support the review teams. In the early feasibility study program, we have EFS representatives that fulfill a similar function. So it's a construct that we're familiar with and that we've seen work well. And so that was the idea, was to try to implement it in Shipmd to help support innovators and to facilitate the communication between the agency and Shipmd.
Great.
And I would just add that thanks, Nicole, that was really helpful. The statute allows FDA to reach out to clinical experts for input and to help address questions. And so this concept of the review liaison is to really facilitate the ability of the review team, if they have particular questions about a technology or the benefit risk analysis, and that was covered very well earlier in this program today. It just facilitates that ability to quickly get those types of questions answered so that the review can continue expeditiously.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll just add one last comment. I think it also helps serve to sort of demystify things a bit. One of the comments that we hear quite often is that, folks are really afraid to come to FDA, or they just don't understand a particular process, or they have, a hesitation about talking to FDA. And so I think SHIP is trying to address that aspect of things, and one way of doing that is through this liaison that could serve as sort of a helpful resource and a go-between.
Yes, thank you so much, Nicole. I have one more question. I think perhaps Eric, you can take a stab at, but everyone else, please feel free to chime in. A question that I got offline. Some of our innovators are having a great deal of trouble with setting up design controls and quality systems. Is there any chance that Shipmd might assist with these sort of concerns?
That's actually, that's a good question. I think, as Tara has mentioned and others, Shipmd is designed for helping out with hospitals as well as IRBs and clinical trials. I think, the comment made by Erica Torgerson from FDA, who is the director of the Pediatric Device Consortium grant program, I would say that if innovators are looking for advice with regards to quality systems as well as setting up design controls, I would reach out to her group because of the fact that we have these 5 pediatric device consortiums spread across the United States. They have engineers as well as quality folks who would be able to support and provide feedback for those types of pediatric innovators. I'm not entirely sure that Shipmd would have those types of experiences, but I believe that the Pediatric Device Consortium would be able to definitely have the expertise to be able to help in those aspects.
Right. Thanks, Eric. One important thing that I would like the panel to consider, we have about 8 minutes left. I'll leave the last 5 minutes for that, but I'm going to get one more question in, and that will membership in Shipmd offer benefits at FDA in terms of access that is not open to others? And will this be seen to create a two-tiered system, like a system of haves and have-nots, or something like that? Anyone from the panel would like to take a stab at this? Yes, please go ahead.
Sure, I can certainly start out, and others can chime in with additional thoughts. We've had a few sessions already trying to clarify what Shipmd is and what Shipmd is not. Shipmd is not a part of the regulatory system. We're not changing the regulatory framework. And as mentioned before, folks, a lot of these resources are available. Sponsors can certainly, we promote interactive review with our lead reviewers at FDA. The agency is certainly accessible. There's the pre-submission program for questions. There isn't sort of an advantage, disadvantage, have, not from a regulatory process. There's no guarantee of a product going through the SHIP ultimately getting approval. There's no change in our approval standards. But as discussed before, sometimes, innovators are at different statuses, right? And for many, there's a lot of hesitation with engaging with the FDA, and sometimes, having that facilitator and having those folks with those expertise to help facilitate those conversations and, provide you with more clarity on what your options are for engaging would be helpful. But there's no advantage gained from a regulatory review perspective.
Great.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that this, Shipmd is not intended to change the regulatory review standard. Hopefully companies or innovators' products are cleared or approved that use Shipmd, but there's absolutely no guarantee, there's no quid pro quo that simply by utilizing Shipmd, your product is guaranteed an FDA stamp of approval. So I do want to make that clear to everyone.
Right. I think it's an important point to make clear. Yes, review standards, evidentiary standards are not going to be changed as a result of being participating in the Shipmd network. Yes, it's very important to make that clear. Thank you so much, Tara. Another question, because I really do want to get to that one last topic. Has there been any discussion with Shipmd and MDIC, since they're both programs supporting innovative medical devices, and lessons can be learned from what that other organization is doing? Anyone has any thoughts?
What, can you repeat the question, Kanwalji?
Has there been any interaction between Shipmd and Medical Device Innovation Consortium, MDIC, since they're both programs supporting innovative medical devices?
So I'll take a stab at that. You know, there was a lot of discussion when we first began this thought process over 2 years ago now, as to the appropriate entity to help lead this initiative. And for many who've had some experience, you know, I've had limited experience, but there are folks in the community who've had experience, and we felt like CPATH was the right home for this particular initiative, because they've stood up consortia focused on pediatric device issues in the past on the drug side. So we felt like their expertise and experience were valuable. Obviously, MPIC is a very, very important group. AdvaMed participates in MDIC. They're doing wonderful work. And frankly, you know, it's our hope that we can take advantage of some of the initiatives that MPIC has already put forward and bring them into Shipmd. So they, for example, MPIC has developed a single contract template, and that may be something that we want to start with as a starting point for a pediatric clinical trial template. So, you know, I think it's our hope that the two are synergistic, and that's certainly the view that AdvaMed has.
Thank you, Tara. Just 2 more minutes left, and I would like to ask the panel to discuss a little bit more and give the audience a little bit more information about what exactly we are planning to do with the expanded breakthrough program. This has been something that has been, you know, requested offline too. Would be a good parting, I guess, thoughts to the audience in terms of what are we envisioning in terms of the breakthrough designation, expanded breakthrough designation program. Anyone in our FDA and industry colleagues have any thoughts about that? Yes, please go ahead, Minerva.
I can start, but I don't know if I have a full answer to the question. I think I'm sort of flipping the
partial
table.
Answer is good, yeah.
Flipping the table to say, you know, there are a lot of challenges that we are all aware of in terms of developing pediatric devices. And what we want to do is think of ways to optimize the system and really move the enterprise forward. And to the extent that something specific for pediatrics with respect to breakthrough might be helpful, whether that be through helping reimbursement or different ways within the agency, I think, you know, with our conversations, we didn't want to take that off the table. And we really want to hear from those in the audience what that might look like. I think Tara mentioned before that, you know,
Sorry, Minerva, your sound broke off. Sorry, we cannot hear you at all. No, it's no sound. Nicole, do you want to take up? I think maybe there's a problem with Minerva's audio.
Sure. I think I maybe can get a sense for where Minerva was going is that, you know, there might be areas where we might be able to facilitate pediatric device development, and areas that, you know, certain programs could be either improved upon or modified or expanded to be able to better capture some of the challenges that I think pediatric device developers face. And so our intent is really to explore where are the gaps, where are the areas where folks feel like there could be enhancement of a program or an initiative that might be able to help encourage some of that device development. And so we're looking for feedback from the audience. You know, what would help you to further your development program? If it's a particular regulatory program like the Breakthrough Program that you think could help and it could facilitate in a better way, we would love to hear that. I think we're trying to explore all possible options for creating an ecosystem that's more conducive to pediatric device development all the way through to commercialization. So, Minerva, did you want to add anything that you were thinking?
I think you're on mute. Sorry, you're on mute.
Oh, audio challenges this afternoon.
That's okay.
So I think you might have summarized it. I just really wanted to put the call back out to the audience to help us understand where we might be able to make some changes or developments to do exactly what you were saying, Nicole, in terms of furthering, addressing some of the challenges for pediatric device development.
Good, Minerva. Final industry perspective. Yes, go ahead, Tara. Mm-hmm.
I want to add to a point that Minerva made. You know, right now for adults, if you have breakthrough designation, then you get an extra payment. And there's no such parallel program for pediatrics. So there's precedent already in terms of this connection between FDA designation of adult breakthrough devices and extra payment from Medicare. So, you know, if we can create a parallel system for children and increase payments for hospitals, doctors, and innovators through this breakthrough program, that's a win-win for everyone. And we facilitate greater interest in the pediatric market overall.